Okay, it's 6 o'clock, March 18th, 2013, so it's time to get this regular meeting of the San Felipe Del Rio Board of Trustees started. Mr. Overfeld, we have a quorum, correct?
Yes, sir.
Let the record show that a quorum of the board members is present, that this meeting's been duly called, and that notice of this meeting's been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. At this time, if you'd stand for opening ceremonies. First, a moment of silence to reflect in your own way. Now the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. That brings us to Item 4, which is the public comment section. We do have one person registered to speak. Before we get to that person, let me just remind everyone that the board encourages comments from citizens of the district or from district employees. Anyone wishing to speak, either as an individual or as a representative of a group, may do so at this time. The board asks that comments pertain to public education issues and be no longer than 3 minutes. And I would remind the board that we may not discuss or act upon any issues that are not posted on our agenda for tonight's meeting. If an issue mentioned is listed on tonight's agenda, the board will defer discussion until the appropriate time during the meeting. And just also a reminder on complaints by students or their parents, they may be heard in accordance with policies FNG Legal and FNG Local. For employees, policies DGBA Legal and DGBA Local. Citizen policies GF Local. All should follow by the chain of command. If a resolution cannot be achieved administratively, the person may appeal the administrative decision to the board as a properly posted agenda item. With that said, on the participation sign-up sheet, I have Mr. Ruben Cardenas. Is he here? Welcome, Mr. Cardenas.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Ackerman, and board members of our public school board. My name is Ruben Cardenas, and I am the senior class president at Del Rio High School. And I've had the great honor and privilege of leading the class of 2013 for 4 consecutive years now. Graduation is a momentous occasion for our graduating students and their families. All of our hard work and efforts, academic achievements, and athletic district titles will culminate on June 7th, 2013. This is a class of which I am very proud to represent and to lead. This is a class of district MVPs and record-setting individuals, a class that has raised the bar for future classes at Del Rio High School, a class that has always united and worked hard to make Del Rio proud, and a class that deserves a memorable graduation ceremony. I am speaking before you today because of the many students who have expressed concern to me regarding the changes to our graduation traditions. Concerns such as the removal of a guest speaker tradition at our graduation, which is an item on today's agenda, as well as the removal of the tradition of parents and students congratulating each other on the field at the conclusion of commencement ceremonies. In order to receive a better understanding of the opinions of my fellow classmates, I sought their opinions, and I visited numerous classrooms, and I spoke with them in the hallways. Throughout my discussion with my fellow classmates, I listened, and what I mostly heard was that traditions are important at Del Rio High School. Many students reminded me that graduation is a time to reflect on the past and to listen to words of inspiration about our future. I also heard from some students that they did not want to hear a lengthy speech at graduation. But the main concern was the involvement of the student and parent input on this important decision that would affect a day that symbolized a milestone in their life, a day that they had worked so hard to achieve. Now, I thank the board for this opportunity of addressing you tonight with the concerns I have heard from my fellow classmates of the class of 2013. I realize that this is not an easy decision, but should be taken into much thought and consideration, as it will not only affect our class, but future classes as well. So, Mr. Garabedian and fellow board and other board members, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. That was everyone, correct? No other speakers? Okay. That brings us to agenda item 5, information items. A, information on participation rebate check with local government purchasing cooperative and U.S. communities for the Home Depot. Presenter, Ms. Paula Johnson. Ms. Giannicani Valdez.
Sorry, on behalf of Ms. Johnson, I'm not sure where she is tonight, but good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Ackerman, board members. This is the third rebate check we've received this year. I believe we presented one in January and one in February, and this is from Home Depot, where we obtain a rebate check for 2% of the sales, and this is through a cooperative agreement, and the total is $883.38, and those funds are deposited into our general fund under miscellaneous revenue.
Questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Brings us to agenda item 5B, facilities and operations update. First being Ruben Chavita Elementary construction update. Mr. Salinas and Mr. Graves presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, members of the board, Dr. Ackerman. Before I turn it over to Mr. Graves, I just want to let you know that I'm pleased to report that the gym was released to the campus on February 25th for their use. Although it's not 100%, it was at substantial completion, and they've been using it since then. That was about a week after our last board meeting. Mr. Graves.
Thank you. Good evening. The gymnasium is nearing completion. The two items that are remaining are the basketball goals and some wall pads. But I'll go through some of these slides here. This is a connecting walkway from the main building to the gymnasium. It's an open walkway. This is a gymnasium. They did get the striping and the baseboard in since I think our last photographs. Restroom facilities. Also some signage, permanent signage. And I think in about 2 weeks, all of that should be in. This is in the gymnasium looking back to the covered connecting walkway. The coach's office. The exterior showing the connecting covered walkway. This is on the north side. From there, we're going into the administration area. This is being remodeled for principal's offices, the main administrative offices. There's a conference room there. This is where the library was originally. Some counters in the conference room. The storage room, they are installing some of the shelving at present on it. The ceiling grid is up. The light fixtures are being installed. When they're installed, the ceiling tile will go in. The restroom that serves the administrative area. About 90% complete. Again, the main reception area. the mailboxes over in the corner. Principal's office behind the window, and assistant principal is to the left of that, not in the photograph. This is the outside. They still have the floor covering to put in the lobby. There was some floor tile removed in the reception, in the lobby area. And we'll have a pattern very similar to what we had in the library, with the gold and black tile. Are there any questions?
Mr. Overfelt has a question.
On that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 slide down, the one that looks back towards the entrance to the gym. Now this may have already been asked, and if so, I'm sorry. How do you get the stuff up into the cage over there? Does it have to be done by ladder?
There is a pull-down stair in the storage room.
Okay.
And
I was worried it was ladder. Okay.
in theory, it's not supposed to be a storage room. It's supposed to be a mechanical room on it.
Okay. Thank you.
It's to service the 3 units that are up there. It's really mechanical mezzanine.
I was just worried it was like throw a ladder up there and try and get up there.
And those panels up there, if they did need to get a whole unit off, those panels are bolted together. You can pull the panel off and get the unit down.
Mrs. Lozano has a question.
Maybe I missed this, I'm sorry. I was engrossed with your pictures. Still studying and getting prices on security was the last note in the last board meeting.
Right.
Is there an update on that? Did I miss that?
We met with the contractor about 2 weeks ago, gave him some specific items to figure on it, the number of cameras, the number of mag locks, how he wanted it controlled. And so he's working with his subcontractors to work up a price to give that to us. We have not heard right now.
That's correct.
Should be any day.
I think Mr. Chavita had a question.
Yes, sir.
When is the date of completion completely finished?
I'm going to say they'll probably get finished in about 3 weeks on this, not counting the security. Their original completion date was January 6th or 8th, I think, on there.
How late are we?
They got the library back in November, first part of December.
When were we supposed to finish the project?
They're supposed to finish everything originally by January the 6th, with the exception of the administrative area that they're working on there. And that may have had to go into spring break or even this summer if they could not get in there to work on it.
You know, the reason I'm asking, we started this project, this bond, I don't know, about 8 years ago or something like that. And here we are, still late. It's pretty. It's supposed to look pretty. But, you always come up here and tell us how late we're going to be. They never tell us, hey, listen, we're going to be late for whatever reasons.
Right.
I think it's about time that they start asking, see if it's all right. I think we need to start working because, see, some of those kids are going to be taken off. The 5th graders are no longer going to be utilizing that gymnasium. It's not fair for them.
You're right.
I think they need to get on the ball. And it's not our fault, some of the reasons because they don't have manpower, whatever the case, well, it's not our fault. They got the contract, let them bring some other people from out of town. I think it's about time we stay on. Because remember, I think 2 or 3 years ago, I kept on saying,
This has been
let's
brought
go
up
ahead
before.
and be on
Yes, sir.
time. And every time we come in 2 or 3 months late, we don't do anything about it. And I think there's a penalty. We never assess the penalty. And the worst part of it is they don't bother to come up here and tell us, ask us, hey, we're going to be late for whatever reasons. They just tell us we're late. Oops. I don't think it's fair.
Ms. Lozano?
I was just going to ask the same thing, Mr. Chavita. What is our recourse for failure to meet contract?
There is a provision in their contract for a late payment penalty. I don't have the amount here in front of me, and it's based on a per day amount. But in the past, this district has never charged that to anybody, as long as they were making good faith effort progress. And the reason it was never charged before is because then that sends the wrong message to the contractors that we have difficulty securing in our area, that we're not going to work with them.
But do you think that's also the reason why the deadline may not be met? Because really, there's no recourse if it isn't met.
Well, we have met the deadlines for the other projects. This project in particular, is we've run into some issues with the contractor subs. And we're trying to work with him through that. We have the issue right now with the pads and the goal posts, the 6 basketball goals. In our estimation, they should have already been here. He's been after them. I got off the phone with him today, and they're telling them 10 days out still to potentially longer. So their hands are also tied in terms of their delivery from the subs that are from out of town.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions?
But we will continue to do our best to stay on them, Mr. Chavita and the rest of the board.
Thank you.
Brings us to agenda item B2, the Bank and Trust Ram Field construction update. Again, Mr. Salinas and Mr. Graves.
Again, before I turn it over to Mr. Graves, I just want to share with you that on March the 5th and March the 14th, Coach Hurley was able to swap some games with our district. We were due to be here at home on March the 5th and then again on March the 14th, but because we didn't feel that the area was still safe, we asked Coach Hurley if he could work out a swap, and he was able to do that, so we haven't lost any home games. Those two games will be played further into the season here at home. Our next game is on March the 22nd, which is this Friday, and we feel that we're going to be able to meet that deadline with all the restrooms being ready to go, the concession stand being ready to go, but there will not be any grandstands, and we knew that ahead of time. This particular project was not due until the middle of April. But before we signed the contracts, we had a long meeting with the contractor that was selected, and that's Sanchez Construction, and he said he would do everything in his power to try to get us to the target date of March the 5th. It just didn't happen. But he was under no contractual obligation to have it for us on March the 5th. We even had discussions that on March the 5th, if the field was ready, there wasn't any grandstands, there wasn't any restrooms, we'd bring porta potties, et cetera, et cetera. For March the 14th, we would have probably had one restroom, probably wasn't going to be enough. We were probably going to be looking at porta potties, and we didn't feel that we wanted to have anyone utilizing porta potties, so we were able to swap that game. So in April, for April the 5th, that's going to be a home game instead of away, and then we're here at home already scheduled for the 6th. On April the 9th, that was going to be an away, now it's going to be a home game. And April the 12th was already scheduled home, April the 16th is away, and April the 19th is a home game. So we haven't lost any home games because of that swapping. Mr. Graves?
Thank you. The area should be ready for the game this week. We're going to probably do a inspection on Wednesday or Thursday with the city and the school. This was taken March the 8th. They're still doing some welding on the canopies. The restrooms at that time did not have plumbing, but they had done some painting. This is going to be the new entrance. We tore down the old entrance going to the field and doing another entrance that'll meet the exit code requirements. This is a concession stand, and I understand that it will probably be ready this week with the exception of any cooking facilities. So sandwiches, things like that could be served here. The electrician is supposed to have most all of the electrical installed. They had most of the lights in last week. This is the east bleachers. They will not have the roof on there, I don't believe, by the 22nd, but that area will be used for lawn chairs to be able to watch the game. Incidentally, I believe they got the scoreboard connected up. There's some programming that needs to be done. Hopefully they'll have that ready, maybe tomorrow. They did get the lights for the field working on it. I believe there were like 3 bulbs out, and the school replaced them. This was the women's toilet room last Friday, and I understand they got the toilet partitions in today.
I did the walkthrough today and they've been installed.
This is the men's toilet room. These are the east dugouts. They're no longer recessed and catching water. This area here is where they seeded the grass, and it was coming up real well last week on it. It's being watered, I guess, every day on it. This is the south or back side of the restrooms, or the street side. Are there any questions?
Ms. Lozano has a question.
Will electrical be available in the concession stands?
Yes.
Okay, no cooking, but
No cooking, and basically what we have at the Walter Leverman Ram Stadium concession areas.
okay, great. What was the update on the welding inspection? Because at the last board meeting, some welds did not pass, so what's the update on that?
They have reworked those, and I think the inspector was coming today or tomorrow.
And so if
check
it doesn't pass again, then what happens to the
They'll
Friday game?
still continue to weld.
What happens to the Friday game?
Go ahead, John.
The inspector said the structure was fine. What they were worried about was long-term erosion of the wells on it. And when he says long-term, 20, 30, 50 years from now on it. They had some pockets in the wells that would let water in, and they are grinding those down. They're re-welding those, and hopefully these will pass this time on it.
And one last question, are those dugouts complete? I mean, that's it?
There's
what
some
they're gonna
benches
look
that go in there. There's some shading that goes on the south side on it.
They're just not very attractive.
No, it's just open shed.
Functional, but not very attractive.
Right.
That's it.
Mr. Overfield has a comment.
You said this Friday we're gonna try and play our first home game there. And I'm all for finally being able to play at home. However, I have a concern that we're debuting this facility half done. And that'd be like going out and playing the first game of football season with the end zone still missing from the field and stuff there. So I'm not particularly fond of the idea of debuting this to the city half done, that people are gonna have to come in with lawn chairs and sit around with, the bleachers aren't there, the covers aren't there. That's just my view on that. I don't think it's right to, after what City of Del Rio, the school district, and the Bank and Trust particularly has put into this, to go in and debut it like that to the City of Del Rio. Again, that's just me, and I wanted to voice that.
comments, questions?
I was
Mr.
gonna,
Chivita?
you said we might be able to play no stands? Can we put some portable,
They want, the access
ones,
to them won't
for the few
fit.
people that are gonna be there?
Right. We're gonna put the call out, bring your own folding chairs.
Because it's coming along pretty well, and of course, we started late, and there was a lot of delays and all that type of thing, I can see. But maybe we can get some stands out there, some portable ones.
Yeah, we looked today for the accessibility of bringing in a 5-tier or a 6-tier type of a bleacher, but we didn't
It's
see an
impossible
access
to get
point.
them in there?
Yeah, because of the height of the
Because
wall and,
you would have to assemble them in there,
yeah.
I would imagine, yeah.
Yeah.
No.
And so we kind of scrapped that idea. But I do want to share again that
Take some
we knew
chairs.
that we started this project late. It was going to run into our program year, and we were all in agreement at the beginning, the state that it was going to be in during our baseball season.
I guess we had high hopes that it would be done sooner.
Yes.
Originally, this was to be done in like 3 stages, and so you would have done maybe a third of it at each time on it, so with the way this was done, at least you're gonna get everything at one time, but not until the middle of April.
Maybe working with the Darrell News-Herald to make sure to get that out, that this is just phase one. I mean, I definitely agree with what Mr. Overfelt just said. You know, we don't want to debut our wonderful new Ram field like this, but making sure that the community knows it's just phase one of 2 or 3, or maybe working with Brian and Jennifer, our friends at
Yes, ma'am.
the News-Herald, would be helpful.
Yes, we will do that.
Thank you, Mike.
Other comments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brings us to agenda item 5C, attendance rates to date by school. Mr. Luna presenting.
Good evening, Mr. President, honorable board members, Dr. Ackerman. My name is Rene Luna. I am the Management Information Systems Director. And at this time, I'd like to present to you the S.F.D.R. enrollment as of March the 4th. The enrollment for the school district was 10,454. ADA cumulative for the month of February is included. We have a chart that shows the cumulative ADA by campus. And we also have a breakdown which shows ranking for ADA. For the second month in a row, we have Ruben Chavira ranking first for ADA at 97.69. Garfield, 97.35. Lamar, 97.33. Dr. Lonnie Green, 97.14. And you can see that they're all really close. All the elementaries, 96.64 for Calderon. Buena Vista, 96.52. North Heights Elementary, 96.51. And Irene Cardwell, 93.92. For secondary campuses, Del Rio Middle School, 97%. San Felipe Memorial, 96.18. Del Rio Freshman, 95.92. And Del Rio High School, 94.52.
Ms. Lozano.
Just one question, Mr. Luna.
Yes, ma'am.
And it might be a better question for Dr. Sally. There's a significant drop from this time last year at the high school, from 96.27 year to date to the 95.66. Say significant, 1 point. But the month is low as well compared to others. Is there something that goes on in February in particular at the high school?
Well, we've had, testing, we've had benchmarking, and unfortunately, we didn't have we didn't have some testing until actually March, right, the beginning of March. But unfortunately, sometimes our seniors that have already done their tax testing, we try to give out incentives. I know we luckily got a donation to try to help us with the incentives, because we try to do as much to encourage them to be there, but we have a lot of kids who have all their credits, who already have all their tests passed, and take those days, because because they don't have absences and not come in, and that's where you see some of the numbers. So they tie in with benchmark days, unfortunately.
And that's primarily for the seniors?
Yes.
Are you saying that with-
Seniors and also some juniors too, having to do with that benchmark. But it's predominantly a lot of seniors that we're missing on those days.
And there aren't any other alternatives to the scheduling for the testing? Is that correct? I mean, I know because, you know, on those particular dates, let's say it's your second period or whatever, the kids, from what I understand, don't really have anything else to do. They've already taken that test. So they're hanging out doing.
We try to do things, you know, for them for financial aid. We try to have them Jostens to come in with the gowns. I mean, there's a lot of things that we're trying to do to encourage that, but still, there's more testing this year because of our sophomores that are transitioning into S.T.R.S.I.S.D and to EOC, as opposed to TAPS early last year.
And you see that also happening in the sophomores, with the sophomores?
Well, they're coming in because of the
The test,
benchmarking.
okay.
It's them that they're actually being tested. But it's our upperclassmen.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Mr. Mesa?
I had the same question she answered.
I would just, congratulations, let's put all, there's some good numbers out there. So thank you, all your principals, doing a good job.
Other comments? No questions for the principals about attendance while they're here? No? And it'll be time to raise the bar once we're hitting the goal. Okay, that brings us to agenda item 5D, discipline report to date by school, presented by campus principals. Looks like Mr. Gonzalez is first.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Ackerman, board members. Ms. Gonzalez, I'll be presenting for the high school. As far as our discipline offenses for the month of February, we have 5 controlled substances, 14 conduct, code of conduct. We have 2 tobaccos, we have 40 insubordinations, and we have 7 people fighting. That was a total of about 4 fights. And our actions for those, we had 1 expulsion, we had 13 out-of-school suspensions, 17 in-school suspensions, 5 of placement in EAP, 49 detentions, 3 parent conferences, and 52 corrective counselings. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Now, Mrs. Garcia.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Ackerman, members of the board. For the freshman campus, we had 46 student code of conduct violation, and we had 40 insubordination. And for actions on those offenses, we had 12 students that we had out-of-school suspension, 6 for in-school suspension, 1 that was placed at the SGLC, 41 detention, 18 corrective counseling, 5 partial day OSS, and then 2 where we confiscated the equipment. Is there any questions?
Questions from the board? Discussion? Ms. Lozano?
And it really applies to all the presentations for the discipline report. we used to, I think, see this as kind of a trending, where we used to see from month to month. We don't see that part anymore. I'm just going to assume, obviously, that you're tracking that, correct, right?
Yes.
And you would alert us to any
Changes,
particular
trends
scary
that we would see.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Ackerman, members of the board. I will be presenting for Del Rio Middle School the February discipline report. For February, we had 4 controlled substances. We had 6 conduct code, 62 insubordination, and 4 fights, which was a total of 2 fights. And our actions for February were, we had 13 students that were out of school suspension, 3 in-school suspension, 3 students that were placed at AEP. We had 30 detention and 29 corrective counseling for the month of February. Do you have any questions?
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Ackerman, and members of the board. I'm here to present our February offense in action for San Felipe Memorial. You'll see that on the offenses, we had 22 were violation of the student code of conduct, 45 were insubordination, and I do want to add that 16 of those were bus referrals, and then we had 6 students involved in fighting. For the action that was taken, we had 2 with lunch detention, 4 for after-school detention. Then we had, can't see that number there, 5 that had their access privileges removed. Then we have 17 that had corrective counseling. I'm sorry, I skipped partial day OSS, 4. 10 parent conferences, 2 that were placed on a contract, 13 that had detention, 1 that was placed at the alternative, 12 that had in-school suspension, and then we had 10 that had out-of-school suspension. So you see that we do have a variety of action. I try everything.
Whatever works.
Any questions?
Questions? Comments? Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Ackerman, members of the board. I'm Jane Villarreal, and I'm going to be presenting for the elementary campuses. We'll start off with Buena Vista. 2 violations of code of conduct. And we had 1 out-of-school suspension and 1 in-school suspension. Calderon Elementary, 6 violations to the code of conduct. 4 out-of-school suspensions, 2 in-school, and 1 corrective counseling. Chavita Elementary, 20 code of conduct, 2 insubordination, and 2 use of illegal knife. We had 2 out-of-school suspensions, 3 parent conferences, 4 corrective counseling, 2 removal of access, and then 13 lunch detention. Garfield had 9 code of conduct violations. Actions were 1 out-of-school suspension, 1 in-school suspension, 5 corrective counseling, and 2 lunch detentions. North Heights Elementary, 17 violations of the code of conduct. 2 out-of-school suspensions, 4 detentions, and 11 corrective counseling for their actions. Lamar Elementary had 15 code of conduct violations and 1 insubordination. And their actions were 1 out-of-school suspension, 4 detention, 8 parent conferences, 7 corrective counseling, and 2 partial day ISS in school suspension. And then Dr. Lonnie Green, 15 violations of code of conduct and 2 insubordination. And we had 1 placed off at S.F.D.R.C.I.S.D, well, off of campus, and then 2 parent conferences, 9 corrective counseling, 2 after-school detention, and 5 EMS detention. That's our presentation. Any questions?
Mr. Mesa has a comment, question. He's thinking about a question.
It's unusual that we see placement at AEP for elementary. It must have been something big. Was that dealing with drugs or something? But the offense is big enough that it's recommended for off-campus placement.
And there's a committee that reviews any recommendations for placement.
So I guess my other question would be, is it a combination of a lot of referrals that has occurred to this particular student? I don't want to get into the details, but...
Right, neither do I, but there was, there was something that warranted this type of placement.
Okay.
And that student did have a monitor with them off campus.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Comments?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding the attendance or the discipline for the principals while they're here? Certainly appreciate them being here to answer questions. No? Okay. All right, moving along. Now we're on agenda item 5E, information on district CIP template. Dr. Jorge Garza presenting.
Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Ackerman, members of the board. I know that when we presented the CIP back then, October, there was a concern with the template. We researched it all over the place, and it was right in our backyard. We're using this program called DMAC, and when I looked at it, I really, really liked it. I'm going to go through one of the templates that one of our principals has created already. The good thing about this is that it gives you a checklist. So all our templates are going to look the same except the goals that each campus has. So we are going to use Calderon Elementary. Oops. All right, yes, I need to check it out. I know. Okay, come on. All right, this is the actual template where the principals are going to work. It gives you the cover sheet, the custom. What that means is they created something, and for that particular campus, what she did, she created the district goals. So the first one was a cover sheet. Second is the district goals. Then the members of the committee, the vision and mission statement, NCOB goals, and custom here, I created this, and I told Ms. Murata that I had touched her CIP. This is very general. It's not concrete. It's not something that is going to be set for us to present. It's just an example. This is the comprehensive needs assessment, which comes before everything. That's before the actual goals that the campus is going to have. And then we have the goals. What Mrs. Murata did, she used our 5 goals, but each campus will have either the district goals or other goals, including the 5 goals, not necessarily the district goals themselves. There's a better way to look at it. If you look at this right here, you can go through it, and it's the same thing right there. Now, these are the goals and the objectives. Each template is going to look like this for every campus. There's not going to be any deviation from that. Now, the goals themselves might be different for every campus, depending on their needs. Okay? The other good thing about this, she went goal 1 and then goal 2. And as you can see, she did not put objectives for goal 2. Goal number 3, she did put some objectives there, just as an example. Goal number 4, goal number 5, and then she created her own goal, goal number 6, or the campus did. Now, the other neat thing about this program is that there's a checklist here. And it'll tell you what you have completed and what you haven't completed. So if there's an X right there, that means that it's not completed. Date reviewed, date approved, and let me just give you an example of what it'll tell you. Date reviewed, it tells you a date reviewed has been set for this plan. Well, no, we haven't reviewed it. They haven't reviewed it at the campus level. The other neat thing about this, I did mention there was a goal that did not have an objective, and there it is. Goal number 2 did not have any objectives, so it's another checklist that will tell them you haven't completed this. And, of course, a CIP has different facets. It has the Nickel B, it has the Title I, it has the state compensatory requirements. And the Title I, it gives you here the 9 different components that relate to Title I. And it'll tell you here that you have not used the ones that are in pink. She used number 6 somewhere in the plan. She did use parent involvement. But if you didn't, it will tell you here that you have not used it for that Title I program. And it will also tell you for Title I target assistance, which in her plan she has not used any of these, but of course this is just a template that she started playing with. She has not completed it. Okay, so it will be very clear that if you haven't incorporated those criteria, it will be evident that it's not in the plan. So you need to go back and review it before we present it to you. Are there any questions?
Mr. Mesa?
I think last year, I remember bringing this up that, you know, we had some campus needs assessments and some that we didn't. And where in this new template do you address let's say the staff evaluation? You know, we have PDAS now, and where would you address those domains that perhaps that campus has is considered low?
It would be, I think I'm not sure if I'm going to answer the question, but it would be in the highly qualified. Are you talking about the highly qualified teachers, or? There is a criteria in the plan that's a checkoff that you need to address in the plan. And there is, one of the other concerns that we had, or that the board had, was the items of how they're addressed in each plan. So there is a checklist that we've checked, and I'll just give you an example. There will be a cover sheet, a district goal, site-based committee members, mission, Nickel B, CNA, state comp, Title I goals, and within those goals, I think that will answer your question, Mr. Mesa. Within those goals, you will identify something that relates to personnel. And if it relates to personnel, what are the objectives that satisfy that goal? I'm not sure if I am answering your question, but somewhere in that plan, with this criteria, with Title I requirements or state comp, if it's there, there has to be objectives to meet that. And we have some documents also that our department has been polling to make sure that we address everything that's required for the CIP. I think that was the other concern that the board had, because it was not concrete. Everyone had a different thing in their plan. Well, not now, because there'll be a checkoff list.
Right.
Everyone will have to have something on that plan.
Well, I still would like to see, more explanation. Maybe I can perhaps visit with you, but what I am referring to is, campus principals request staff development, opportunities for their campus, and I want to make sure that it's on target for that particular campus. And again, not so much to say, well, this campus didn't target what they need, but for academic progress, it needs to occur.
Of course.
Whether it's writing or whether it's math, reading, whatever strategies that campus is falling short on, then it needs to be addressed through staff development.
Yes, sir. The campus needs assessment will identify the needs for that campus, and they will use demographics, they will use assessments, they will use data, and let's just say it's writing. Well, somewhere in their goals, they will say, we want to increase writing to 98%. And within that goal, they will have some objectives to get to that goal. If it's professional development in writing, if it's professional development in anything that relates to that need, it will be listed on that objective.
Right. Yeah, I know assessment does, but I just wanted to see the other area of staff evaluation and the results of it. Because again, PDAS will target, it'll indicate, what areas might be considered low.
I would need to understand the
Sure,
question a little bit better,
sure, I understand.
Mr. Messick, is
Just if you could look into that, because
Sure,
there's got to be an
sure.
area there that addresses that.
You're talking about connecting PDAS and staff, I'm not sure where it would fit, because I've never seen PDAS and CIPs, but I will have that conversation with you and see where we can incorporate.
That'll be fine. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Other questions?
Yes.
Mr. Chavita?
Dr. Gatsa, you were saying that our goals should be different, each one? Why?
It should not be different, but if there's other goals in the campus, for example, in safety, if you look at that goal, you can always connect those.
Let me ask you, please. The reason I'm asking is because, just like a curriculum, our way of teaching, our methodology, everything, I think it ought to be the same. Yes, the objective is probably a little different. The method of arriving at those goals should be maybe a little different. But I think we should work together and everybody have the same goal. I think all the elementary principals can get together, come up with some goals and some activities they can come up and be able to reach those goals. When the kid moves from one place to another, he wouldn't have any problem.
Right.
I've been to some districts where even the teachers, their format of teaching is almost identical. The methodology as far as asking questions and the format and all that type of thing. So when the kid moves from another, when they go from, they know exactly what they're going to be doing.
No, if you look at,
I'm not saying that it's, well, I think it should be that's my way of thinking. I think it ought to be the same.
Sure.
Just like our curriculum, everybody ought to be on the same.
No, I understand what you're saying, because my thought has also been, if I look at the 5 goals, somehow incorporate the objectives that relate to that within that goal, because that could be true too. And it's not said yet, sir, so we are brainstorming and trying to figure out how to make sure it's more concrete. When we met last Thursday with the directors and coordinators, I had a vision of creating a district improvement plan that was very doable, that I could read, that I could work with, and all kinds of stuff. But when I started looking at the requirements, sometimes the requirements themselves become so overwhelming that it's hard to keep it all concrete. But then I stepped back and I said, well, let's not make it too complicated. Let's make sure that we put in all the requirements, and if we can connect it to certain goals, those 5 goals, then that will be a lot better, a lot more legible, a lot more workable document that anyone can use. That's really our goal. By no means am I saying that it's already set, Mr. Chavita. I'm just saying that we are looking at the 5 goals and figuring out a way to connect all the objectives that need to take place in that campus to improve what's happening at that campus. Because Chavita Elementary might be a lot different than Calderon Elementary in demographics. And they might have different needs because of the scores that they have. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, true. You know, our kids, there's not a whole lot of difference.
No, there's not, but at the same time,
We're not
there's
that big
different
of a
needs.
city. And and I'm not saying that the goal should be, I don't know. I think they should be the same. I think everybody else should work on it and come up with something that would be workable for everybody. And it shouldn't be that much of a difference because we should have but one goal, and that's to educate the kid as to how we set that
Objectives.
format.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. And let me just clear myself, because I saw that you were not in agreement with me. The goal is the same, but the objective to get there might be different in that campus in comparison to another campus. That's what I meant.
Other comments? Well, I look forward to the final product. From a IE perspective, institutional effectiveness, this looks better than it did, 8 months ago? I know you and I had talked about that, so
And again, at least we're working on something. We're going to get there.
So
And
when can we see the final product?
What we're going to do, our goal is to have the CIP ready for them to present it when they defend their budget, which means May,
All right.
May 1st.
And that's a much better cycle. Now you've got planning, budgeting, all tied the way it should be. And my understanding is there'll be a little bit closer look at how things are being assessed. I know we talked about some assessments that were not assessments for what was trying to be measured, so that will be part of that process.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And maybe we can get back together and brief me on that, because there is some things that you and I talked about that I need to make sure that we're in agreement.
I think it looks good. I think it's a good improvement. Other comments?
Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 5F, Intervention Stage and Activity Manager, ISAM, report to Texas Education Agency. Mr. Luna presenting.
Good evening once again, Honorable Board. My name is Rene Luna. In your package, under item 5F, you received a short timeline in regards to an intervention stage and activity data validation that we were identified as a district in at level 3, stage 3. During this data validation, we were notified that there was 3 students that were identified with indicator 1 for length of out-of-school suspensions, and 29 students that were identified with indicator 3, which was unauthorized expulsion of students 10 and older. The timeline that we received notification on January 28th. My staff compiled the data for these students. We started filling out a template that we received. After that, we formed a committee. We received members from the campuses that were identified, which was Del Rio High School, Del Rio Middle School, San Felipe Memorial, and I believe it was Chavita Elementary. It was the secondaries plus 1 elementary. At that time, we presented our findings for the student level data, and they went back to the campuses, reviewed their files, and returned anything that they felt was incorrect. We went ahead and processed the data, and we did our submission to the state on March the 8th, 2013, which was the Friday right before spring break. And tonight we're here just presenting the item that we had as a stage 3 and the students that were identified.
Comments? Mr. Chavita, you had a question? Mr. Mesa?
So it's really to say that it's been completed?
It's been completed, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And so we're just going to wait for the response now?
It's a hearing that we had to have in regards to being a stage 3 identification that we received for the indicators. But the hearing and the data level, the research has been complete. It was submitted. Yes, sir.
Okay. So the hearing will transpire at a later date, once it's set?
Yes, as soon as when we receive the data, we'll present it to them.
Thank you.
Other comments? Okay, thank you. The last information item is G, update about the FRN Federal Relations Network Conference. Myself presenting. I don't have a lot to tell you. I don't want to take up a lot of time. That was a conference that took place in late January of this year. It's really a combination of advocacy and networking for school board members around the country. The big focus this year was about the pending sequestration and the impact of the cut in federal funds. Kind of went back and forth a little bit, projecting, I think, at 1.6% cutback in federal monies available, and then a little bit lower. It's something that all the districts nationwide, those that receive federal funds, are struggling with. It's really kind of various estimates out there. My concern as a board member, the advocacy is great, trying to stay in contact with your representatives and all that, and make them aware, and they do listen, but the federal budget is what it is. I know that's kind of a overly simplistic statement, but I certainly hope as a district that we're prepared for the cutback in federal funds. I just don't think there's a whole lot that's going to change as far as funding at the federal level. So, anything to add, Dr. Ackerman? I know you've been kind of looking at where that's going.
Well, 5% or 5.1% of all of the federal funds, unless we cut some services, is going to impact the general fund.
I had a question. I know that one of the biggest impacts that, the program that will have the biggest impact as far as Head Start is concerned, I wonder how that is going to happen if funds are cut. What have they received anything?
In fact,
Yes, they've received notification from Head Start. Is that correct?
Yes.
To cut theirs 5 point.
Yep.
Is it 5 or 5.1?
They received it on March 1st to cut 5% from the Office of Head Start.
Because that was still kind of up in the air when the auditors were here. They weren't entirely sure. The people that reviewed it weren't entirely sure. So.
That's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. And you said that notification came down first of this month, right? March 1st.
Yes, March 1st.
And that was kind of another dynamic to it that nobody knew exactly until within the last couple of weeks.
I think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
To take effect immediately or by?
Well, it would be for the next NOGA period. For all of our NOGAs, we've received notification that it would be for the next funding period, which would start with their next funding period, and theirs would start, I believe, in July.
All of the federal funds are July 1 to June 30, except Head Start, and it's August 1 to July 31st.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. All right, we'll move on to consent agenda. With consent A being consideration to approve minutes of the following meetings, the regular school board meeting minutes from February 18th, 2013, and the special called board meeting minutes from February 22nd, 2013. So does any board member wish to pull any item from consent agenda A for discussion? No. Is there a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda A? Mr. Overfelt has motion, Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries. That brings us to consent B, which lists items A through L. Does any board member wish to pull any item from consent agenda B for discussion? Mr. Over, no? Did you want to pull?
I just had a question on G. And my question is always, is the funding already budgeted?
On what?
On G.
On G, whether or not that's been budgeted.
Yes.
Transportation.
She was budgeted.
Thank you.
Other question, Mr. Mess had a question about the budgeting of the vehicle, that it has been budgeted.
Yes.
Any other questions or one to be pulled to discuss? No? Okay, is there a motion to approve the items on consent agenda B? Ms. Lozano has motion, Mr. Chavita A second. All in favor by a show of hands. It's unanimous. Motion carries. Before we move on to the discussion action items, as is the custom, there were several donations, so I'll read those to recognize the donors at this time. There's a donation at Del Rio High School from Funding Factory in the amount of $104. There's a donation to the Del Rio High School Athletics from the Texas Athletic Productions in the amount of $750. There's a donation to Irene C. Cardwell Elementary from Life Touch in the amount of $688. And there is a donation to the Del Rio High School Eco Action and Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America from Nemesio and Maria Garcia, and that donation was a Yoshino cherry tree valued at $20. So we thank all of those donors for their support of the district. It's now 7:05 and we're on discussion action items. Agenda item 8. First being A, consideration to approve the competitive sealed proposals as a construction delivery method for the construction of the district's minor projects. Presenter, Mr. Salinas and Mr. Graves.
Good evening, board members. Okay.
Good evening again. This agenda item starts on page 82 of your packet. And is to approve the construction delivery method for our minor projects that are funded annually through the local plant management and facilities budget. And they include but are not limited to paving, roofing, and air conditioning improvements in the district. And according to Chapter 2267 of the Government Code and our own local policy, the Board of Trustees shall determine the project delivery method that will provide the best value to the district when considering the procurement of these construction services. The main project delivery methods to consider are the following: competitive bidding, competitive sealed proposals, construction manager at risk, construction manager agent, design build contract, job order contract, and interlocal contract purchasing cooperatives. So to help with this process, I put together the handout that I just presented to you on the different construction delivery methods, and I'm going to go over that very quickly, and if you have any other detailed questions, then I'll have Mr. Graves share that information. The first one is competitive bidding, which is what we used to have to do prior to 1995, and is just based on cost. Obviously, the cost of the lowest responsible bidder at that time. There was no room for negotiation once you got the cost. Since then, since 1995, we are allowed to also use a competitive sealed proposal, which gives you the benefit of looking at the cost, so there's no real reason for any district to be using just competitive bidding anymore. The advantage of the competitive sealed proposal over competitive bidding is that it gives you the latitude to negotiate cost in the event that that cost comes over the project budget. And so you're allowed then to work with the offerers for a change in scope and time modification and get a reduction in cost. This proposal does require, though, that 100% of the construction documents are ready to be bid on. And the subcontractor costs are not shared with the district. We get one lump sum for the whole project, and that's all we see. The next method is a construction manager at risk. This does not require for the construction documents to be at 100%, but you do have to hire the contractor ahead of time through a process. And they will give you a fee based on their construction management at risk fee and their general conditions price. Then that contractor will advertise for the subcontractors for all of the divisions of work that are in the contract. and all of those costs are shared with the district. So the district actually gets to see the electrical cost up front from the 2 or 3 subcontractors that bid on it, the mechanical portion, you name it, the whole 16 divisions of work that you find in the construction project. After those are reviewed and there's an agreement between the contractor and the district as to which subcontractors to accept, the contractor develops what is called a GMAX, which is a guaranteed maximum price, and we agree on it, and then they have to stick to that GMAX price. The construction manager agent is somewhat similar, but the agent has no risk involved. They're basically just a consultant to the district. The district has to sign the contracts with all the subcontractors, and unless if you have a whole construction department, districts don't use that. Design build contract is where you're going to go to a single entity to design it and build it for you, but we're still required to hire a contract, or an architect, I'm sorry, or an engineer to be our representative to make sure it's being built properly. The job order contract is a method that allows school districts to put together a proposal from contractors in our area to submit unit pricing for specific types of work that we're going to have in the future. We just don't know how often we're going to need it. It's on a recurring basis. We don't know what the delivery time is going to be, and the types and quantities of work are indefinite. So, for example, we may ask in our request for proposals for these subcontractors to give us a unit price for laying a 4-foot wide or a 6-foot wide sidewalk, or fencing that is 6 foot tall. What is your lineal foot unit price for that? The other way that they can do it is that the contractor can submit a pricing factor based on a index book, such as the RS Means Facilities Construction Cost Data Book. So, for example, a contractor may propose to perform any work that's in that book at 80% of those unit prices. So if we hire that subcontractor, we would have them delineate all of the different costs that come out of that book, and we have to make sure that we're getting a 20% discount. And the last one is the interlocal contract purchasing cooperative, where some of the cooperatives have already gone out and secured those services, like the job order contract, and they're available to districts that have an approved agreement with them. So, for example, we have an interlocal agreement with TCPN and Buy Board, and so we can go directly to those cooperatives and secure those services without us having to go through the job order contract bidding process. So with that said, for the minor construction projects that we're proposing for this year of paving, roofing, HVAC, etc., we're proposing the competitive seal proposal method, because we feel that it's going to be based on a selection criteria for those projects that are going to be anywhere from $100,000 to $500,000, depending on the amount of roofing that we do, or HVAC. And we have the flexibility to negotiate the cost for a change in scope via value engineering or time modifications if they exceed our project budget. So we feel that that particular method over the other ones suits our minor project delivery method. Any questions about the delivery methods or the minor project?
Vanessa has a question.
I know this is, construction has always been real complicated because, again, there's so many different various things that we do. This would not be for, let's say, new school construction, but minor projects.
This particular request on our part would be for the minor projects of re-roofing a building, HVAC, new HVAC that we're adding to a building, or redoing a whole parking lot. Okay. It would not be
new school.
A new school or an addition. Obviously, if we do that, we still have to come back to you and ask for one of these delivery methods, and it could very well be the competitive seal proposal.
I know in the past, we look at the contractors that have, let's say, completed bids, and then we see the type of experience they've had in these particular buildings, let's say educational, whether it's college or school, And, a lot of consideration was given to that, what kind of work they've done, and, if it's similar work.
And that would be part of what you would establish in the selection criteria and give a weighting to it. And so you can establish locally how many projects they've actually already done for the school district, how many projects they've done that are similar to the ones that we're asking for across the state or in other states. And so you can develop that criteria with this method.
Okay.
Mr. Chavita?
So you're gonna have all this, scoring system, but we don't have a starting date and a finishing date as to what the,
Yes, that would actually be within the construction document for the request for proposals within the construction manual, the project manual.
Ms. Lozano has a question.
Just a couple of questions, Mr. Salinas. The proposed minor construction projects, and it says not limited to. Does it have a cutoff
Dollar amount?
cost?
That was my question.
I mean,
Well,
because
Is there a threshold, I think,
for
is
me,
what?
these are major, but of course,
Yeah.
you worked in this, so, I mean, you define those as minor.
Yes, minor for us is what we're doing within the budget that is part of my annual allotment. It's usually $1 million. This year, it was bumped up to 1.5. So that's what we consider minor. The major projects are the ones that are coming out of the bond construction funds. And those are in the millions instead of maybe a roofing project that might be $250,000 for this particular campus to do 2 roofs there or 3 roofs. Or a paving project at the high school that's going to be $150,000 to $250,000.
But obviously, those projects would still be brought to the board to approve. It's just you're requesting.
The construction delivery method, yes. And so once you approve this method, we will actually do the RFP and bring it back to you so you know the final cost. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Other questions, discussion?
Okay. It's the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the competitive sealed proposals as a construction delivery method for the construction of the district's minor projects to include but not be limited to district paving improvements, district roofing improvements, district HVAC improvements, architectural engineering certifications required by law or policy for district performed work.
We've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to accept? Mr. Chavita has motioned. Mrs. Lozano has seconded. All in favor, by a show of hands, it's unanimous, motion carries. Brings us to 8B, consideration to approve the interlocal contract purchasing cooperatives as a construction delivery method for the construction of the Del Rio High School Ram baseball practice field lighting project. Again, Mr. Salinas and Mr. Graves presenting.
Okay, that agenda item starts on page 84. It'll be the same construction delivery methods that I just went over. However, for this particular project at the practice ram baseball field that's never had lighting, and we're in dire need of it, not only for ourselves, but also the community involvement with Babe Ruth and other entities that would like to use that field when we're not utilizing it. And we felt that the best construction delivery method was the interlocal contract. And the reason for that is that we'll have quick access to qualified contractors for this type of specialized work, because there are very few of them in the state of Texas, and faster contract award times since our cooperative partner has already bid out these services. And that's the advantage of the interlocal purchasing cooperative contract. Similar to what we did for the Del Rio High School Walter Leverman Ram Stadium. We did an interlocal, yes.
Mr. Chavita?
this is for the lighting?
Yes, sir. And I did give a layout.
And according to your letter here, this is to be used for games, maybe JV, that type of thing? Would it be possible to maybe include some bathrooms, or maybe at the same time facilities for tennis that is so needed out there because they don't have a place to sit out, they don't have a place to, use a bathroom unless they open up a freshman So why, is there any way that maybe we might be able to include something like that there?
There is a set of restrooms that's in real close proximity to the baseball field, but there isn't any, I mean, obviously the tennis court's a little further away.
Yeah,
But
but they could utilize both.
Yes, they, both athletic programs can utilize that restroom. Now, during the budgetary process is when we're developing those types of requests, so that we can go ahead and earmark it and say we're gonna commit, to doing that or not. And this would be the time, to indicate that.
The transformer that is serving the baseball field lights has been increased to where we could build some restrooms in between the tennis courts and the baseball field. We're keeping that in mind.
And so you do have a preliminary site plan. It's not final yet for bidding purposes per se. That won't be finalized until after you give us the approval. But we are looking at, if you'll notice, a fence line back here, the outfield fence line, and visiting with the coaches and Coach Hurley, that there might be a need to extend that fence line out. So we're certainly not going to put a light pole inside of that. We're going to go ahead and look ahead and put it outside in the event that we ever do move that fence line.
This would make it so much easier to maybe even host a tournament, a small tournament at least.
Yes, ma'am, and also with Dr. Ackerman's permission, we're going to be visiting with the city again in that interlocal type of agreement to pursue a joint venture and cost sharing.
Thank you, Mr. Salinas.
That's great.
Anything else for Mr. Salinas? Mr. Overfield?
If you push that fence back, how much closer are we getting to the tennis courts there?
Oh, it's
I don't have it scaled out, but we can certainly get that information to you, Mr. Overfeld.
If we put that new transformer in, besides restrooms out there, if down the line we built a small field house to hold dressing room and storage, et cetera, there, that transformer will be fine.
Yes.
We won't have to go back in and.
Won't have to go back and increase that.
Okay.
There is enough room to get the road through where the fence is being extended. There's presently a driveway through there.
Don't make it impossible to ever hit a home run, though.
Anything else? Any recommendation?
Okay, it's the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the interlocal contract purchasing cooperative as a construction delivery method for the construction of the Del Rio High School Ram baseball practice field lighting project.
For further recommendation, is there a motion to accept Mr. Overfelt's motion? Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor by show of hands? It's unanimous. Motion carries. Okay, before we move on to,
Thank you.
thank you.
We'll see you later.
Before we move on to discussion action item C, there has been some interest expressed in moving one of the action items up, which of course, as you know, we can do that. We don't have to take them in the order. Mr. Overfelt has indicated an interest in moving discussion action item I, consideration to approve removing the tradition of graduation speaker at Del Rio High School, to be next. Are there any objections to moving that item up? No objections. Okay. Then pursuant to that, we will move, instead of C, we're not on C, we're on I, consideration to approve removing the tradition of graduation speaker at Del Rio High School. Presenter, Dr. Sally Zuniga-Barrera.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rourke Ackerman, and school board members. Del Rio High School continues to have great academic success, and the number of students, the number of graduates has increased throughout the years. For the last 3 years, we've had over 600 graduates. One of the first items discussed upon my arrival to Del Rio High School was how we could improve the graduation ceremony and focus more on the graduates. In August, I met with the two new senior sponsors and discussed the process entailed in not having a graduation speaker. I first looked at policy and found nothing in regards to the graduation speaker, only the student speakers. I brought up the topic of not having a graduation speaker at our first department leaders meeting in September to get the teachers' feedback. We had good discussion, and everyone was in agreement to put it on the agenda for our first planning and decision-making committee meeting in October. Del Rio High School's PDM consists of a teacher from each core area, a paraprofessional, 2 parents, 1 community member, and 1 business member. The PDM chair asked the committee to meet with the people they represent, and that this important topic would be voted on at the December meeting. Administrators do not vote. Throughout this 4-month period, I personally spoke to about 20 or more senior class students and asked for their stand on this topic. I spoke to a diverse group of students. I spoke to class officers, I spoke to student council members, to some athletes, to some thespians, to some UIL participants, and also students that were not in any extracurricular activities. And they all said that they did not want a graduation speaker. And if they did have one, that they wanted someone famous and or someone who would talk to them for only 5 to 10 minutes and not any longer. Some didn't want anyone to speak. They just want their diplomas. In December, I asked my DPDM members, I have 2 members on the District Planning and Decision Making Committee, to put this topic on the agenda because I knew that our campus PDM could not make this final decision. In February, I met with Dr. Work Ackerman about other arrangements for graduation, and this topic was brought up. And that entails, walking on the field and everything else also. She did not and does not feel comfortable with breaking away from tradition without including you, our school board of trustees. She also suggested that I should have involved more students and, more importantly, the parents in the initial stages of this topic, and I agree with that. And that's why we're bringing it to the school board this evening. Does anybody have any questions?
There's going to be some questions. Mr. Overfelt, you can start.
You said it went to PDM there in October, and
Yes.
they were to hold a vote in December. How did that vote go?
Everybody in PDM voted for, it was unanimous, to not have a graduation speaker.
Yeah, how many? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
How many people did you say there were in the?
It's over 20 members. You have all your core areas represented, your fine arts, special education member, your paraprofessionals, and they represent the campus. And then we also have 2 parents who happen to be parents of senior students, and we also have 1 business member and 1 community member. I think they recommend for you to have 2 community and 2 business, but most often we only have 1 of each attending our meetings.
Okie dokie. On the other part about talking to the diverse group of students, officers, student council, etc., and them agreeing that, we don't want a speaker. However, the class president's here and is asking the board to keep that there. And I saw another high school student walk in there as well.
She's Annie, our National Honor Society president. And I think more than anything, what they're asking, and Ruben can correct me if it's different, I know that the whole discussion has been, because you have different kids that have different ideas. I think more than anything, they want to have input on it. And, that's what Dr. Ackerman said from the beginning. You know what, there should have been, more discussion with the students from the beginning, also having, some dialogue with parents as well. And so I think that's where the main discussion has been.
And I'm sorry.
May I say something? And did I not say all of the students?
Yes,
Did I
ma'am.
talk to all of the students and all of the parents?
Yes, ma'am. And we had not done that. And there was different ways that we could have done that, most certainly. And that could have been done earlier, and that's what I put in my memo that y'all have.
It talks about the students wanting someone famous, and I'm sure everyone has their different version of famous, because we've had some interesting people come to Del Rio High School and speak. We had First Lady Laura Bush once. We had the First Lady of Texas, Anita Perry, there. And talking about the 5 to 10 minutes there, we can tell the speaker, look, you've got this much time, and when that's up, the mic goes out. And we move on. Because yes, I know there have been, I know there have been times where it has gone on and on and on, because I sat witness to one of those in 2001, I believe, where it just went on, and it was almost the second time that graduation got canceled at Del Rio High School. So, the whole famous thing, there are different versions of that, but I can't agree with this. You're not going to tell Harvard to go in and change its practices there of let's do away with it. And the University of Texas, yes, I know we're there to see our children graduate, but that's just part of the whole evening, is having someone speak. And we can do a job of telling them, look, you've got this much time, and that's going to be it there. So if anyone else has anything to add to that.
Oh, I think there's more coming. Mr. Chavita, go ahead.
Thank you. There's a saying that we are measured by what we treasure. There's a whole lot to say about that. And I do respect the opinion of some parents, some students, and some of your staff. And I'm sure that some of the students said, hey, let me have my diploma and get out of here. But then none of these students have ever experienced graduation. None of them. Not the 20, not the 30, not the 500 plus. So what's going to happen 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now when they say, hey, listen, I wish we would have had a speaker. I wish everything would have been together. There's nothing we can do. And secondly, I think that if we're going to break away from tradition, we need to do it 4 years from now. Go to the freshman class. I think just like anything else, we're going to make any changes, let's make them way back. The students here have worked. This is not our graduation. This is the students' graduation. This is parents that have waited 4, 5, 12 years to see their kids graduate. So I'm not for making any changes. If a decision was brought to us, I think we have to leave it as it is. I mean, no exceptions. I think we ought to stay with what we have, and if we're going to make any changes, let's do it 4 years from now. Let the freshmen start thinking about what they want to do and not do it spontaneously right now. This is not our graduation. This is the city's graduation. This is our community graduation. And for us to make a change just right now, I don't see it.
Other questions? Mr. Mesa?
First of all, I've sat through several, keynote addresses, and most of them, the majority, have been very motivational, inspirational, and they're shared experiences, not borrowed, but personal experiences about being successful. I think the college, just surviving college alone, they need all the help they can get. Besides, personal, organizational skills to, living their dreams and aspirations means a lot. And to me, it's what everyone is saying here. This graduation is not ours. It's not PDM. It's the students.
Exactly.
And yeah, we have, because I know you have, you can regulate as to, I've sat through the keynote speaker that, several that, Mr. Overfeld just mentioned.
Let's not mention names, right?
Because at one point I was, going like this, that's enough, but those things can be managed. But I think it's theirs. And again, we need to include every student whenever a decision is to be made like that. And I still would like to continue using the keynote speaker because, again, I feel that every student is just continuing on a different chapter of their lives. It's not the end. It's the beginning of that, college life or career that they're going to choose, and so they need all the help they can get. And, again, I'm not in agreement. We need to keep it.
Other comments? Ms. Haynes, Ms. Lozano, which one? Everybody's gonna talk.
I agree also. I think it should stay the same, and I just want to say that the young man spoke so well. I'm just so impressed, and your words were just awesome. You spoke so well, and I think it should stay the same, and you have the authority to say, hey, you have 5 to 10 minutes, and there will be no mic.
Maybe we can put that in policy or something, right? No, I'm just kidding.
5 to 10 minutes, and you can cut him off. So I think it should stay the same.
Go ahead. No, I already spoke. I was just gonna add something to it, but go ahead.
I have to say, I agree with everyone's sentiment here. I mean, that is tradition. I mean, where will we draw the line? What else will we deteriorate from here? It's tradition. It's what I hope Mr. Cardenas, and was it Annie? Will one day return as the important person to speak to that graduating class. I mean, what incentive that would be for our youth that are graduating to say, hey, I hope one day I'm up there giving this commencement speech. I mean, I think it would be really, really sad to take that away from our students who have worked so hard. And I hope we, as the board, do have the authority to say, please do not change that. Thank you.
I was gonna add, part of the graduations, it's for the parents to go out and congratulate. I know we want to take care of our stadium, but that was one of the reasons we had something like that, for everybody to utilize it. And that includes the parents. That includes anybody that wants to go up in there. I know it might be spike shoes type of thing, but we can eliminate those high heels, that type of thing, where the parents can get on and congratulate their kids. Go up in there and hug them. Hey, I know I experienced 3 graduations, and everyone was great. And I think that our kids need to experience every single item. First, my high school, that was for my parents, and then the other ones was for me. I mean, I wanted to get out there and prove something to myself, that I could go to college and get my master's. And so, anyway, like I said, and I'll repeat it again, the kids don't know what, some of them, they have never experienced what it is to get a diploma. Maybe they got one when they were in the 8th grade, but that didn't count. This is a big one. So I'm hoping that we continue to treasure our tradition.
Well, on the agenda was only the tradition of graduation speaker.
Andy, we're going to put it to a motion?
Well, we will when we're through discussing.
I'll move that we go ahead and not
Okay,
make any changes.
Dr. Sally, explain to me what graduation would look like without the speaker that you're describing. Explain to me what it looked like. I mean, what would the agenda look like?
It would be the typical stuff. You would still have the procession. You would have everybody coming in. You would have, there's the address, of course, of the valedictorian, your salutatorian, the benediction, everything else. The superintendent, makes a statement. The principal makes a statement as well.
Class president, right?
Huh?
Class president?
Class president does not. It's not, no.
Yes, they do.
Last year they.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Ruben, yes. Hello. No, it's because we've had some discussion also where student council wanted to say something as well, but that's not it is the class president. Yes, the senior class president does. And so, that's how it would be, everything else without that. And of course, I know that this is one thing that we're talking about, but it's also, with everybody going out onto the field as well. We had talked about some different, options as well with that.
So are there going to be any changes in And the procedure, did I notice something in there? What did you say?
Well, still coming in the same, but still coming up with a plan for the afterwards just because of the field. You know, we've talked to our kids all year long about what they can wear. You know, they can't wear spiked heels. They have to wear a special shoe, a wedge shoe. Our staff members have to wear a special shoe as well because it will damage our field.
But the procedure is going to be the same for who's going to speak first?
Oh,
and
yeah,
as we
exactly.
had,
Oh,
and
no,
who's gonna lead
that's all
the-
in policy.
Who's going to lead the marches?
Yeah,
and
everything.
Who's going to come in first? And
Everything is the
Great.
same in that.
I sure would like to see the whole thing stay and such.
Okay, assuming that graduation format continues as it's always been, but assuming that there isn't approval to do away with the speaker, at this point, mid-March, are you, as the person organizing all this, are you at a disadvantage in finding a speaker that's appropriate? I mean,
No, I don't know how early they usually do that. I'm sure we can get somebody. I mean, I think we're going to be all right.
I think they'll be all right.
Finding a speaker, we'll be all right.
how many graduating seniors are there?
There's over 600, the
Over
class,
600,
yeah.
okay.
And there has been over 600 for the last 3 years.
So there was no vote. That's what I understood. There was no vote among the seniors.
No.
Why wasn't there a vote?
Well, because we were working on it, but we haven't gotten that situated after I had met with Dr. Rourke Ackerman in February. You know, going kind of like with a survey and stuff. And so I thought, you know what, instead of them doing their class flower, their class song, everything at the, like towards the end of the school year, that was going to be part of the survey. Like, you know, do you want a guest speaker? Yes, no. And if so, like some recommendations. That way we could get some feedback from them as well.
Other questions? Any questions? Yes, Mr.
I just
Martinez.
want to reiterate what, Ms. Chavira said, that I hope the tradition stays the same with no changes at all. Because again, I'm thinking of, the placement of the students, the president and you have the same order. In other words, that we've had it before with no changes. I hope that remains because now I'm at odds like, what else is changing?
What else is changing?
Exactly.
Other questions? Any questions for the class presidents here, the student council? No?
Just a good job.
You ready? Ready to vote? Okay, Dr. Sally, if you give us a recommendation.
Okay, it is a recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approves removing the tradition of graduation speaker at Del Rio High School starting in June of 2013.
That's campus administration.
Excuse me, campus administration.
Okay, we've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to accept? No motion.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we are on, where did we leave off?
C.
C, right? So now we're back on agenda item 8. C, consideration to authorize superintendent of schools to negotiate a contract for the purchase of electricity for all the district's facilities. Mr. Salinas presenting.
Good evening again. This agenda item starts on page 87. Our Texas General Land Office contract for the purchase of electricity for all our facilities will expire at the end of this school year. And so at this time, the administration would like to start researching options for future energy pricing beyond the current GLO agreement. and seek pricing from various commercial electricity service providers. We'd like to do this since the prices in a deregulated market are extremely volatile and sensitive to movement in the prices of natural gas. So authorizing the superintendent to negotiate and sign a contract to purchase electric energy creates a flexibility to immediately lock into a beneficial electricity price when the opportunity arises. So in essence, we would be studying the market. The purchase of electricity under a new contract would commence on January the 1st of 2014.
Questions? Mr. Chavita, go ahead.
Is there a lot of companies out there that we're going to be working with, or do we ask for?
There are several out there that are independent that are going to want to give us a price. The ones that we've, after we do the whole review, we end up coming right back to the Texas General Land Office because we don't have to pay some fees when we're into them, and they're very competitive. But we will look at others, yes. Some of the others are that are out there are out of the Dallas area, the Houston area, and they're going to give us a price. We're going to open it up.
We have done an energy audit, right? I think Dr. Ackerman said we did at one point.
Years ago, there was. It's in the 90s.
And do you sign a contract for so many years, or is it a?
It was a lengthy one. I can't remember how long it was, but it was a lengthy contract. And all of our thermostats were set from not here, from like Georgia or someplace.
Are we going to be looking for a contract for 1 or 2 years?
When you do that, you have to do a lot of retrofit, and which is like boarding up windows.
That's a different type of contract, Mr. Chavita, for energy savings.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Yes. This is strictly to be able to turn on the lights and have power to our facilities.
Okay.
The recommendation?
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the superintendent of schools to negotiate and sign an electric sales agreement with an approved commercial electricity service provider that provides the best value to the district for the purchase of electricity for all of the district's facilities.
Heard the recommendation, I so move. Is there a second? Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries. Brings us to discussion action item D, consideration to approve the first reading of Policy Update 95, affecting local policies A, B, D, F, B, B, DFE, DGBA, EIE, FNG, and GF. Mr. Salinas again presenting.
Thank you. Under separate cover, y'all should have received this update 95 booklet manual. And this update 95 incorporates recent changes to the administrative code regarding the following: bilingual education, student retention and promotion, the required instructional program, tuition for transfer students, and graduation requirements. It also includes statutory provisions addressing the official name of the district, board member powers and duties, procurement of legal services and facilities construction, term contract non-renewal, employee resignations, and grievances. So Update 95 has been presented to you along with the local policy side-by-side comparisons. Those are color-coded for your review. The red is deleted text, the blue is new text, and the green has been moved text on the side-by-side reviews for the local policy updates. This information has been shared with all of the cabinet members, and they have reviewed their particular areas of concern. So therefore, in summary, Update 95 includes the following as noted on the attachment called Update 95 Instruction Sheet. It has 28 legal policy additions, revisions, or deletions, 7 local policy additions, revisions, or deletions, 6 exhibits, addition, revisions, or deletions, and 1 index addition, revision, or deletion. The 7 local policy additions, revisions, and deletions include the following policies: AB local, which has to do with the district name; DFBB local, which has to do with term contracts and non-renewal; DFE local, which has to do with termination of employment and resignation; DGB local has to do with personnel, management relations, employee complaints, and grievances; EIE Local, which has to do with academic achievement, retention, and promotion, FNG Local, which has to do with student rights and responsibilities, and student and parent complaints and grievances. And the last one, GF Local, which has to do with public complaints.
Any questions? This is approving the first reading. Of course, Mr. Mesa.
Go ahead.
I have lots of questions.
Okay.
I noticed, like, for example, it's a bilingual one. I was, DHEB?
Do you have the policy, D?
DGB, no, it's not DGB. DFBB?
Is it a legal or a local?
Let's see, I'll find it. Well, actually, it says DHBE, legal.
It's legal then. If it's not one of the locals, they're all going to be legal then.
Yeah, it's legal. My question is, it calls for a dual language immersion program, the bilingual program, and then it says that the district has to, the administrative code continues to require district implementing a DLIP to have a local policy addressing enrollment and continuation for students in the program. As it is, whenever you have a change in program structure, it requires some funds, and as it is right now, we're losing funds, we're not gaining any funds. And I don't know how in the world, I'm all for it, but a dual language immersion program, it's a total change, in structure.
What was that letter, those letters again?
It's actually on page 3. Let's see, no, not page 3. Page 5.
But, okay, you're talking about on your vantage points.
Bilingual education. If you look
And it's on what page?
Page 5.
Page 5. Okay, so if we go to EHBE Legal, which is on the back part of your manual, and they're in alpha order.
There's like 11 pages of it.
Yes, that's where the actual legal is at. It's one of 11 pages for EHBE. But if you back up to the front of your manual, under explanatory notes, it gives you the main highlights of the changes in that legal policy, which starts on page 7. And so EHBE Legal for Special Programs Bilingual Education, there have been changes to this legally referenced policy, and it states the following. The administrative code now uses the term English language learner rather than limited English proficient, but includes a definition clarifying that the terms can be used interchangeably. So they're wanting for there to be a change in the naming, although right now they're still allowing both and they're interchangeable. At language proficiency assessment committees, the LPAC on page 2, LPACs must discharge their duties within 20 school days rather than 4 weeks, so that's a change. And in districts and grade levels without a bilingual education program, the membership of the LPAC must include a campus administrator. Ours currently already does. Additional details on administration of the home language survey have been added on page 3, and it continues on page 8. At parental notice and consent, beginning on page 3, a district may now identify, exit, or place a student in a bilingual education program without written approval from the student's parent under certain circumstances. You couldn't do that before. As reflected on page 4, bilingual and ESL programs must be selected from one of the program models outlined in the administrative code as listed at bilingual education program models and ESL program models on page 6. So if we go to page 6, of that actual policy, is where you now find dual language immersion 2-way or dual language immersion 1-way. And so What I'm gathering from that, Mr. Mesa, is that as mentioned above, as mentioned above, because the dual language immersion program is considered part of the bilingual education program, I'm sorry, I moved ahead. As reflected on page 4, bilingual and ESL programs must be selected from one of the program models outlined in the administrative code as listed at bilingual education program models and ESL program models on page 6. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Gatsa to see what we're using in our district. But that's allowing for a dual language immersion program to exist within the district. Dr. Gatsa?
Yes, and that's what I was going to say, Mr. Mesa, that it's an option now, but we're using the early exit. We're still using the early exit until we evaluate what we want to do. We can choose one of the other three, but at this time, we're still using the early exit. It's just saying that that's an option. That's all.
Okay, so I'm not going to, ask too many questions. I mean, there's a lot of changes, and I just want to make sure that, like, for example, everything has, that you don't need parent approval to exit a student. That's one example.
You have to have certain circumstances, though, and it is outlined in the policy.
Okay, so all those things, I mean, have to be, again, brought to the attention of the teacher. And as we implement these changes, they're numerous. Just, I looked at the bilingual program because, again, that's an area of concern. But there's a whole lot of changes there that in just
Just in this.
EHBE. I mean, there's a EHEB.
Let me tell you what Mr. Salinas is doing. Every principals meeting, he is discussing policy. So at that point, we could inform the principals, making sure that they understand the new rules and regulations.
That's one area, because again, there's 11 pages of that, just that one alone. So.
Yes, but we have discussed in cabinet that if as a cabinet member, if it affects your area, then you have to be the lead person to share that with your staff.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chavito?
I would just, the way the policies are written, the blue additions to it, I like them.
Yes.
They're more direct, and the exceptions were taken up, which is great. So I think a lot of improvements on it.
They do that for local for some reason. They don't do that for legal. They expect for you to read
Yes,
these others, because under legal, you have no option, but local, you do.
yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Our local was great because it,
Yes.
all these exceptions kind of throw people on. They know exactly, it's more direct. You do this, you get together with a lawyer, et cetera. All that type, it was great. Yes, I liked it.
And update 96 was just received.
So we're just barely getting to the first reading of 95, get to 96. Other comments, discussion? Okay, the recommendation?
It's a recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees add, revise, or delete local policies as recommended by TASB Policy Service and according to the instruction sheet for TASB Policy, Localized Policy, Manual Update 95 as presented.
For the recommendation, is there a motion? Mr. Overfelt has motion, Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Brings us to discussion action item 8E. Consideration to approve the last phase-in of the pregnancy education program patterned after the Eagle Pass Pregnancy Education Program. Presenter, Ms. Yannicani Valdez.
Good evening again, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Ackerman, board members. Betty placed a copy of a revised memo. We revised the recommendation. Do you not have one, Dr. Ackerman?
I have it in my book.
Oh,
I
okay.
was just seeing if they had it.
Okay. The body of the memo stayed pretty much the same. We added a sentence, and I'll go through that, but I did change the recommendation. I added some more to the recommendation. Now, the administration had been implementing the pregnancy education program to follow the pattern of the Eagle Pass School District, and everything had been completed in modeling the program with the exception of the daycare facility. As Dr. Ackerman had been keeping the board updated in her communiques, the current facility at Del Rio High School is not suitable for a full daycare program. We then moved forward and did an RFP to all the local daycares in Del Rio. And there was only, and that was included under your consent item A. And only 2 responded with all of the information that we had requested. So what we have here is we provided a comparison of the cost, the daily cost, to if we were to purchase a daycare facility and maintain it versus using the prices provided in the RFP. One of the daycares did provide an estimate of what it would cost for them to sell their daycare facility, and their estimate was around $250,000. And that's the price that I've included here. Of course, it could range, it could range outside of that. And what we did was, if we were to purchase a daycare facility, you would have insurance, staffing, and we already, provide transportation. And with the number of days in school, that's also was part of the bid, where the fee per day would only be based as the child is at the facility. So based on a 96% attendance rate, as of the time that we put this together, we had about an average of 14 babies or children at our current facility, would calculate to an average of $74.40 a day per baby or child, versus what the daycares provided at an average of between $15 to $20. $15 if the ages are from 1 to 2, and $20 if the ages are from 0 to 1. And, as part of this review, also on an annual basis, if there are any changes to the daycare guidelines, they would be reviewed on an annual basis so that we can keep up with, any of the changes that they provide, whether they may be, suitable for us to meet those expectations or those guidelines.
Questions, discussion? Mr. Mesa is going to start.
Yanagani, so the students would be taken to the daycare center? The babies?
The babies? Yes, we discussed that we would keep the same process of, the transportation, and where we would take the babies or the children to the daycare center, just as currently the students, if they do require transportation, they're picked up with their babies if they require transportation right now.
I didn't hear, what was it, who's taking the babies?
No, I said currently the same process would exist, that if a student does require transportation currently, we are picking them up and with the baby, but again, if they do require that transportation, the same process would follow.
So then at dismissal, the same thing would happen?
Right.
Okay.
Ms. Gravy.
Mr. Chavita.
This is great, a comparison. I like the way it's set up, and the contract days probably is best for us. But who's going to monitor all those services that are going to be given to us so that we can be in compliance? I hope it's not somebody from the high school. I hope it's somebody that independent to go up here and make sure that we're in compliance with TEA. Or who would be responsible for it? Who would be responsible for monitoring all the services that are being given by, if we were to go on a contract basis?
For the daycare? Okay, as far as the daycare's concerned, they have their own agency that they
So
are
we don't
monitoring.
have to worry about them being in compliance.
Right, with their license, they can't even, they
Oh,
can't even
great.
open it without a license.
My concern was because it would have been another problem for the high school administrator to go up here and check it out. Yeah, well, okay, no, I can understand.
Ms. Valdez and Ms.
Johnson?
Johnson.
Ms. Johnson, she was hid. Went up to check it out because I didn't want to recommend anything without it being checked out. It's a fairly new facility, but they have room to expand. And I was even talking about that perhaps we might have a parenting class there. I don't know that we can, but I mean, those are some things that I was trying to think ahead on, that maybe we could hold some of the parenting classes at the facility.
Okay, well, it's,
Yes, and
great.
when we went to visit, the owner was the one who also offered that without us recommending it at first. They even offered, they have a room at the, their last room is set up more like a comfortable area with couches and tables. And she even mentioned, if you wanted to have a class here or bring a teacher here, you could even do that. So.
They were very,
And they did have shading outside, which is something that I looked for, but they did have shading outside. They did have, of course, everything that they need to have for a daycare, like a cooking area and the restrooms. And so they did have everything, and they do have the capacity to absorb the students and the children and fluctuations that may exist.
Mrs. Lozano has comments.
Is 2 years the cutoff? 2 years of age?
Oh, because
Because
of
the contract daycare services information you provided says age 0 to 1 and then age 1 through 2. So is 2 the cutoff?
I don't know, we had it cut off.
at age 3, then they go to,
Head Start. Cardwell.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why it's
If we can
2.
get them in.
Into the migrant
Right.
program.
Because you may not always go to Cardwell.
Right.
At age 3, they can go to Cardwell, and then at age 4 is pre-K.
So would these children have priority to get into Cardwell?
Is there a 3-year-old program there or a pre-K program there as well at Simply Kids?
I don't know that we even checked with them on what age they would keep them.
Right, they do have what they called rooms set up for older children, but right now they don't have that age group, but they do have the rooms set up for those age groups. And we were using the age groups that we currently had, so that would be something to review
I was just curious if
outside of
was
that.
like,
No, it's a good point, I didn't think about that, but outside of that, that would be something to review.
kick them out.
Well, some daycares have their preschool
Do they?
programs and the
Right.
3-year-old
Okay.
programs, so because they may not qualify or get into Head
Right.
Start.
Right.
So we can't really rely on that as well.
Well, and they don't have that age group there now, but as ours
They-
leave 2 and go to 3, then they would have that age group.
And they do have
That would be
like I
important
mentioned, they do
follow-up.
have the room set up.
Because we want them to graduate.
Yes, yes. It'd be a shame to have them go through 1 and 2, and then when the child turns 3,
No, and,
Mom has to
and
quit.
we will consider that on our reviews in the future. We just were using the current age groups.
Other comments? Questions? I think it's pretty clear, right? I mean, you have a list of possible options, and some were very, very difficult and not, very feasible. To me, this seems clearly like the next logical and best step. I know Dr. Sally and her staff have worked extremely hard and kind of put us in this position to make this improvement, so we certainly thank you for everything y'all did this past year in improving.
And there was
program.
one thing that we did discuss with Dr. Sally. She said she wished that we could keep the newborn babies where they are, but we don't have anyone to find out whether we could even qualify to keep them up to 4 months or 5 months. But we would have to become licensed to do that. It would be great.
And the liability.
But I just want to say that the girls that are attending that program are very grateful, and they attend, and they do what they're supposed to
Yeah.
do. Like, they go to class, and they follow through their testing, and, because I visited, and they're doing very well. So I hope the transition will be smooth. So I'm hoping that'll work out still for them.
Yeah, the 2 times I visited the program at the high school, it was a very, very good setting. So I think y'all done excellent, but I do think this is the next logical step, improved step to move it out and into a different domain, I guess we'd call it, or a different setting. Okay. Recommendation?
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the last phase-in of the Eagle Pass Pregnancy Education Program by approving the daycare services of Simply Kids Learning Center, LLC Number 2, and approves for the interim superintendent to sign the agreement.
You've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to accept? Mrs. Haynes has motion, Mrs. Lozano has second. All in favor by a show of hands. It's unanimous. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brings us to discussion action item F, consideration to approve renewal of licensing agreement for Atomic Learning Technology Training Program. That's Cheryl Pond presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Ackerman, members of the board. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Atomic Learning. It is our online professional development for technology. Currently, we are using it for teachers to earn equipment for their classrooms, such as the Promethean board, LCD projectors, and document cameras. And now we're working toward using the MobiView mobile tablet. So I'm going to kind of give you a little tour. All district personnel have access to Atomic Learning. You all have access to Atomic Learning. We have a link on our district homepage. So you log in with your regular network credentials. These 4 windows come up. Basically, this is kind of a one-stop shop for any question you have. You know, in the middle of the night when you're formatting those spreadsheets and you don't know how to get that formula in there, you can use Atomic Learning. You can either search by a question by expanding the window and typing in your question, kind of like Google. In the middle here, you have featured training and projects. This is set up for, we have spotlights, which Atomic Learning kind of put some programs together that they think are of interest or currently trending or, you know, hot topics, those kinds of things. Workshops are designed for teachers to work through to help integrate technology into their classrooms. It gives them instruction and then a project to work on with their students. Projects, same thing. It's specifically designed to be a project for students. And then tutorials. This is the part that we're using right now for our staff development. If you notice on the drop-down menu, it has tons of applications. It even has a special ed component for assistive technology. If students require a particular type of technology that maybe the diagnosticians or special ed teachers are not familiar with, or even the regular ed teacher is not familiar with, they can log on here and go through the tutorials. As you can see, there's just a huge list. this was particularly interesting. Gliffy, it is a web-based graphic organizer. It's free, but I'm going to open it up so you can see exactly how long it is. There are 73 tutorials. The entire time is 1 hour, 55 minutes. It is broken down. So, for example, if you were already familiar with this, like you were familiar with Excel or PowerPoint or Word, but you had a specific question, you can just watch the videos that you want. For example, exploring Gliffy is a 2-minute video. So it doesn't take up a huge amount of time. You can do them in small chunks, which was a huge plus for asking teachers to do staff development on their own time. Questions so far? I can go on for hours, so. Okay. To monitor use of the program in the district, we can actually pull up reports. We can specify what kind of activity we want to look at, just an overview. If we want detail, we can do it by location. You notice that we have 2 different user types, teachers and students. When we purchased the license for all teachers, that gave us access for students and parents at no additional cost, so it's kind of like buy one, get 2 free. We can set up a particular time period that we want to look at the reports. Part of our E-rate funding requires that we have teachers trained on internet safety. So we couldn't get to all of the campuses in a timely manner to do that. We just don't have, personnel, but Atomic Learning has internet safety training. We had all of our teachers go through and watch that. We could log in, pull up a report to see which teachers had completed it, which ones hadn't. Teachers received a certificate of completion from Atomic Learning once they had gone through the training. So we have used it for things other than just the technology equipment.
Questions? Mr. Massa?
Yes, sir?
So, Cheryl, the students can access this at home.
Yes.
All they need to do is go into our website and then from there.
Yes. We have set up parent bulk accounts. We kind of sent that out at the end of last school year so that parents could access it over the summer. We have not done a big push for students yet. Just trying to work out logistics on how to get students trained to get in, although they know more than most of us about how to get in there and do that. I have spoken with several teachers that they can use it with their students. They can have their students log in and go through the tutorials to learn how to do some of those things that they want to learn how to do for school projects and things. But yes, students can log in from anywhere.
Oh, this is an excellent resource because, again, I'm thinking like summer school and especially tutorials, after-school tutorials.
But it is just a technology component at this time, so there's not anything that's core content related for tutorials.
I see, okay.
Other questions? Any numbers on how many people use this?
An excellent question.
Traffic, I guess we call it.
Yes. I pulled up a report today. For example, for Del Rio High School, there were 10,573 hits alone. So let me show you. Of course, I did it from the beginning of our program.
Which was school year?
I don't know.
This may take a minute. Okay, so this is just kind of the first one. You see that we have that huge spike in September. That's when we required that all the teachers go through and do the internet safety. So at that point, every teacher had logged in and watched the series of videos. And as you see, it kind of trends down because then people can get in there and do their on-demand training when they want to. We can, as a district, assign training. For example, if We did something district-wide where we're all going to be using iPads, every teacher, every student. They can log in, go through all of the iPad training, and then, earn their iPad. That's how we've done with the projector. They go through and do the training. If funding's available, they earn a projector. Okay, so you asked if we can see how many. Sorry, it does not want to stay still. But, okay, we're going to call that good. Give me the same one, hold on. I don't know if you can see under the gray where it's loading, but there are 54,730 videos or tutorials that have been viewed in the district, 40,073 workshops, 336 downloads. Of the 21st century projects, there have been 185 views, 2 e-portfolio uploads.
How many workshops?
40,073.
Workshops.
That is the way they put things together. Part of those workshops are assigned for the technology equipment earning. I went through and selected what we had done in the past with face-to-face academies and picked those particular projects, whether it be tutorial, some of them are projects, some of them are called workshops because it has multiple types of things in there. It's not just one thing on PowerPoint. It'll be, I think one of them is called Integrating 21st Century Technology. And so it would have these different components where you'd have some tutorials and you'd have a project to do with your students that teachers went through and watched. Now, whether they did the projects or not, but they at least went through the videos and did the training.
Can this information also be found on YouTube?
Yeah, could be. But we have this here as a resource for teachers because in the past, we have not had YouTube opened up to use in the classroom. It is now opened YouTube/education. But these are very specific and they are very short video clips. For example, if you're formatting that Excel spreadsheet, you only want to see that part on formulas. You can go through, find the one you want, watch 2 minutes, rewind it, watch it again. I had to watch mine 5 times, but you have that kind of control versus the YouTube where they might be lengthy. It might be something you really don't want. You don't have to do a whole lot of searching. It's all in one place. And it's safe to use. You don't have any of the additional advertisements that students can click on. Sorry, this is taking so long to load. But I have a copy if you want to look at it. We could pass it around.
That's kind of was my question. That's all right. And user satisfaction is measured by?
We haven't really done a survey to measure satisfaction. We've just been measuring usage. But we could certainly do that.
Okay. All right. Nothing else from me. Any questions? Comment? Sounds good. Okay, the recommendation?
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approves the contract and authorization of payment to Atomic Learning Technologies.
Okay, we've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion? Mr. Metz's motion to accept. Mr. Overfelt is second. All in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous. Motion carries. And it looks like it's still loading up on the
It
screen.
is.
But
Do
we'll
you want me
save
to
that.
leave it or exit it?
No, we'll save that for another meeting. I'll have questions again. Okay, discussion action item 8G is being pulled from tonight's agenda. We'll bring it back in April. Administration informed me it's not quite complete as they would like, so that was G, consideration to approve remaining Eastside library books as surplus, not quite complete as far as what they were going to recommend, so pulled tonight, we'll come back next month. Which brings us to discussion action item 8H, consideration to approve the instructional materials allotment antique certification for 2013-14. Dr. Jorge Garza presenting, but it looks like Mrs. Brown, Patty Brown is presenting instead.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Garabedian and Dr. Ackerman, board members. I've been asked to come up here to show you about the consideration of approval of instructional materials allotment, and this is an annual certification required by TEA for districts to do for every subject that we are required to teach, make sure that our instructional materials cover all of the TEKS, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. So what you have to certify is the following. Number one, that the instructional materials selections transmitted via EMAT have been approved for use in our district or charter school. We understand that all instructional materials adopted by the state are appropriate for use in Texas schools. Number two, that this district's instructional materials allotment will be used only for expenses allowed by TEC 31.0211, 82nd Texas Legislature. Number three, that this district purchases instructional materials that will assist the district in satisfying performance standards under Texas Education Code 39.0241, satisfactory performance standards on assessment instruments adopted under Texas Education Code 39.02A and C, 82nd Texas Legislature. Number four, that any instructional materials used by this district should collectively cover all elements of the essential knowledge and skills of required curriculum other than physical education for each student, for each subject, and grade level. And five, that this district will provide the title and publication information for any, instructional materials requisitioned or purchased by the district with the district's instructional materials allotment. And we are certifying that we are doing this for grades kinder through grade 12 and for all subjects, including career and technology, English language proficiency standards, fine arts, health, language arts and reading, languages other than English, mathematics, science, social studies and history, and technology applications.
Overfeld?
So just this, this is just saying that the stuff we have on hand covers all that.
Yes, we are.
It's not saying
Yeah,
that
every year, we are required to certify, the board is, and the superintendent, saying that we will make sure that all of our instructional materials cover all of the TEKS.
Right, so it's not saying that we physically have enough on campus.
No, it has nothing to do with that.
Your questions? Okay, the recommendation.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the board approve and sign the instructional materials allotment and TEKS certification 2013-2014.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept Mr. Messa's motion? Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor, by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to the last discussion action item under 8, and that is J, consideration of San Felipe Del Rio CISD Board of Trustees to call for voting of the Education Service Center Region 15 Board of Directors, election of place 3 and 6. This is in your packet, direct from the Region 15 offices. Should be self-explanatory. Just look at the memo that they sent. You'll find the ballots for the Education Service Center Board of Directors election according to ESC Region 15 policy and Texas Administrative Code. Each board trustee shall have one vote for each vacancy on the ESC Board of Directors. Completed ballots to be returned to the attention of the chairperson of the ESC Board of Directors by April the 5th, 2013. and from there they'll canvass the ballots and complete the process. So, as the instructions state, at a board meeting, preferably in March, that's where we are. Item on the board agenda should call for the voting to occur. You've all looked at it. Everyone has their ballot in front of them. So, we don't need a motion, I guess just call the vote. Everybody call for the vote if you're ready to vote and turn them in, and they'll be sent back to the ESC. You turn them in or we'll give them to Stella.
Coming down your way.
Secret ballot. Pull it up.
Secret ballot.
Everybody?
Yes.
Right here.
Everybody finish with that? Okay. So that voting is complete. Okay, that brings us to agenda item 9. It is now 8:30 p.m., March 18th, 2013. The board will now recess this open session and convene in a closed meeting in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, Subchapter D and E. Specifically, tonight, we do that under 551.071, private consultation with the board's attorney, report regarding pending legal issues, report on settlement status, professional employee service credit placement. First one being private consultation with the board's attorney regarding pending legal issues, and 2, discussion of personnel and consideration to terminate term contract teacher. We also can do that under 551.072. Deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease for value of real property, 551.073, 551.074, which is discussion of personnel or hear complaints against personnel, first being discussion of new hires, new assignments, district vacancies and reassignments. 2, discussion of the following new position, Director of Emergency Operations, pay grade 6. 3, discussion of the job description and evaluation forms for Director of Emergency Operations. Also applicable, 551.076, 551.082, 551.084. All final votes, actions, or decisions will be taken in an open meeting. We're now in closed session. Okay, it's now 9:31 p.m., March 18th, 2013. And the board will now reconvene in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, Subchapter D and E. No action was taken in closed session. So now that we're reconvened, that brings us to agenda item 11, discussion action items. With the first being A, consideration to approve new hires, new assignments, district vacancies, and reassignments. Dr. Patty McPanera presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, members of the board, Dr. Ackerman. This time, the administration recommends the following new hires for your consideration this evening. Miss Natalie Yvette Ochoa, Instructional Technology Coach at Del Rio Middle School. Miss Eva M. Lopez, 8th grade language arts teacher, Del Rio Middle School. And Jennifer Rowcliffe, art teacher at Ruben Chavita Elementary.
We've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to accept? Mr. Chavita has motioned. Ms. Haynes has seconded. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to discussion action item 11B, which is consideration to approve the new position, Director of Emergency Operations, pay grade 6, and the job description and evaluation forms. Again, Dr. Patty McPanera presenting.
Mr. Garabedian, members of the board, and Dr. Ackerman. As presented in your packet and also in closed executive session, the administration recommends the new position of Director of Emergency Operations, pay grade 6, and the job descriptions and evaluations that were also contained in your packet this evening.
Okay, before calling for a motion and a vote, Is there any discussion or question? Ms. Lozano?
Yes, I'd like to see that we add, that this person be responsible for an anti-bullying program. Noted. Thank you.
Any other questions or any discussion? I think it's a position that's really important. It's certainly one that's needed. It gives kind of a new dimension to the preparedness, someone finally dedicated to just that role, making sure that the plans are in place and practiced. So I think it's the logical next step in making things as safe and prepared as possible.
What did you say, safety issues on that, co-ed? Okay.
So if there's no other questions or discussion, we've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to accept? I so move. Is there a second? Ms. Lozano has seconded. All in favor by a show of hands?
Thank you.
Keep your hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mr. Chavita, are you voting? 5 in favor. All opposed?
Abstain.
No opposed. Any abstentions? Mr. Mesa abstains.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you, Doctor.
Which now brings us to 11C. Consider and take possible action to terminate employment of term contract teacher. Is there a motion?
Mr. President.
Mr. Overfeld?
Mr. President, I move to terminate the employment of Ruben Vasquez's multi-year term contract and further move that the record of this action reflect the following. Before voting on this motion, the board considered its prior actions in this matter and the administrative record. The failure of Mr. Vasquez to request a hearing or otherwise appeal the proposed termination in accordance with law and district policy, and a draft of the letter notifying Mr. Vasquez of the termination of his employment, and that by passage of this motion, the board finds good cause to terminate the employment of Mr. Vasquez based on the reasons previously noticed and a matter of administrative record, directs the interim superintendent to prepare for the board president's signature a final notice of termination of employment for Ruben Vasquez, and ensure that the notice is delivered upon Mr. Vasquez, and directs that a copy of this motion be attached to the minutes of the meeting, and that the final notice of termination of employment be sent to Ruben Vasquez.
Okay. That was a motion, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is there a second? Mr. Chavita, second. Everyone's heard it. Ready to vote. All in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous. Motion carries. That brings us to action item D. Consider and take possible action with respect to any one or more of the 3 school facilities / real property of the district described below, to find that such real properties are no longer required for the current needs of the district for educational purposes and should therefore be sold in accordance with applicable legal requirements. Property 1, the former Sam Houston Elementary School in Del Rio, Valverde County at 700 Broadbent, and consisting of the land bounded by Barrera Avenue, Gutierrez Avenue, Broadbent Avenue, and Eduardo Street. Property 2, the former Garfield East Campus at 100 Las Vacas Street, Del Rio, Valverde County. Property 3, the former Austin Elementary School in Del Rio, Valverde County, located at 300 West Chapoy and consisting of the land bounded by Cantu Street, Chapoy Street, Diaz Street, and Jones Street. And discussion action item E, which goes with that, is consider and take possible action with respect to any one or more of the above described real properties so authorized to be sold, to delegate authority to the interim superintendent to establish terms and requirements for bids, the bid package, bid process, and to designate representatives to interact with bidders and to oversee the bidding process in accordance with applicable law. Those are presented by Mr. Salinas.
Good evening again. It's the recommendation of the administration that the board find the following identified real properties are no longer required for the current needs of the district for educational purposes and should therefore be sold in accordance with applicable legal requirements. Property 1, the former Sam Houston Elementary School in Del Rio, Val Verde County at 1700 Broadbent, and consisting of the land bounded by Barrera Avenue, Gutierrez Avenue, Broadbent Avenue, and Eduardo Street. Property 2, the former Garfield East Campus at 100 Las Vacas Street, Del Rio, Val Verde County. Property 3, the former Austin Elementary School in Del Rio, Val Verde County, located at 300 West Chapoy, and consisting of the land bounded by Cantu Street, Chapoy Street, Diaz Street, and Jones Street. The board is also asked to take action to authorize the sale of the aforementioned described real properties, to delegate authority to the interim superintendent, to establish terms and requirements for bids, the bid package, bid process, and to designate representatives to interact with bidders and to oversee the bidding process in accordance with applicable law. If approved, public notice of sale will be issued, and interested parties will be able to submit bids for consideration by the district in accordance with the bid packages and process to be established by the interim superintendent.
Okay. Okay, everyone's heard the recommendation, and that's for both action item D and E, correct, Mr. Salinas? We've read those. We've had a recommendation for both D and E. Is there a motion to accept? Mr. Chavita motions, Mr. Mesa seconds. All in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.